let's go over. Odelia is standing by. And Odelia, congratulations.
But he will give us an account of how in 2021, their stewardship towards our finances as a country was run, and then going forward, how revenues are going to be picked up for spending. I have with me here to do a bit before we go into the Stanbic graphic business program, which is focusing on highlights of the 2022 budget and a few insights and what should go into it. Well, I have with me Stephen Boadi, who is the Chief Enabler at Enabler Growth Consult. And then I also have with me Eric Amponsa Boating. He is the Senior Tax Manager at PKF. Well, my name is Odelia Ntiamwa, and join us for the discussion. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
What would you say your highlight was in the area of revenue in the 2021 budget? I'm interested in revenue because if we really haven't made enough, our spending becomes an issue.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. To you, Eric, first.
Good morning to your viewers and your listeners. I must say that Ghana has always had deficit budgets. What it means is that our expenditure is always more than our income. And so that has been the case ever since we started having our budgets. And therefore, my focus or my expectations have always been that government would ensure that in terms of revenue
mobilization,
I would want to see more of it in the budget. For 2021, because of the COVID that we had, you agree with me that they introduced the 1% COVID levy,
yes,
which I believe that has helped. And I believe that in 2022, is going to also be in there because the COVID has come to stay. One other thing that I'm also...
Sorry, before you go on, how long do you think this levy should be sitting in the budget? How long should we take this?
Well, I think that for as long as we have the COVID, it should be there. Let me just digress a bit. You know, now we have the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy.
Yeah.
In the past, we used to have the National Reconstruction Levy. And so that is given, or that levy is there to support the budget.
Yes.
Okay. And it's normally for bodies, corporate bodies, who have a net profit before tax. So once in your financial statements, you see that you have a net profit before tax, immediately you have to pay 5% of it. So, but this one is a levy, that's the COVID, which is an indirect tax. So what it means, therefore, is that it's only when you consume, okay, that you are actually going to pay the tax.
For it, yeah.
Yes. I also agree with government that there's a need to increase the road tolls.
The road toll.
Yes, I think that it's something that all of us expect. I have mentioned this severally. My challenge has always been the fact that we are not automating them. And so at the end of the day, you got to the toll booth, somebody hands you a paper, you give him money. How do you ensure that that paper or that printout is what is genuine?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, even though we collect or we expect so much of the money, in my opinion, goes into private pockets. Okay, so that is that. We are also happy, or I am also happy, because now the Ghana card has been linked to your PIN.
Yes.
And so that is how come immediately that was done. We expected that immediately the number of taxpayers should increase.
Yeah.
But whether it is going to translate into figures or not would depend on the GRE. Because if you have information, and as a body,
you are not using
you are not using. Look, these laws have always been there. I always say that these laws are there, but the tax authorities have to ensure and enforce them. Okay, so that is also that. Then we can also look at the oil revenues. Okay, I'm happy
the prices are going up on the international market.
Yes, but you see, Ghana loses revenue in that area because one, yes, I'll give you the reason.
Importer.
Because even on the rig, you know, there's a dipstick that is normally used to measure. And I find it absurd because it is a human being who is there, and in my opinion, that person can be influenced. I'm happy that government has now outsourced that. So what we now have is that sensors are going to be used to determine the flow. And so we are sure that whatever royalties or taxes that are due the state, we are not going to lose out on even a drop of the oil. Okay, so I think that the government is doing well. My only problem is that the GRA as an institution, they're also doing well, but they actually failed to implement the law, filing of returns and all that. And I believe that this year, or the 2022 budget, even though we know that lawyers, professionals in general, how many of them file their returns? I remember that at the GBA conference,
that was a critical issue that was
it was raised, and that is one area that government can get a lot of money. We can also look at property rate. So many buildings are springing up everywhere.
Okay. Landlords are charging rent, not paying the property tax.
The other issue is that we also hear of people, in quotes, the big ones. The tax authorities just have to invite them and talk to them. I'm happy that GRA is also doing well because now they have set up an office, which is purposely for that.
I will come back to you looking at the fact that the finance minister just about 2 weeks ago spoke about the fact that we cannot keep employing many more people and that people should go into entrepreneurship. I'll come back to you on that. Okay. But I want to be able to find out from you what actually stood out for you in the revenue side.
Thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. I will speak from the point of view of establishing platforms to enable us to generate as much money as possible.
Since you're an enabler.
Yes. And two areas that the government has done well is the establishment of the Ghana.gov platform and also how they've linked the Ghana card to the TIN. These two are supposed to help in kind of enable the generation of revenue. These are pluses. I think where it hasn't gone too well is creating enough awareness about the use of these platforms. That's one. A lot of people have heard about Ghana.gov, but we haven't had a sustained campaign to encourage people to use this platform. So there we need to do a bit more, and I'll be glad to hear what steps are being taken to do that. The second part is linking the Ghana card with a TIN. We still have a lot of people who don't have the Ghana card. And so even if people are willing to pay, they don't have the tools to enable them to pay. So we need to fix these two before we can really generate enough money. The potential is there, but we need to fix these two first.
I'm sure the directive for all of us to re-register our SIM cards will help with the registration of the Ghana card.
It will, but I think, again, we should have, if you ask me from a private sector, we should fix the issue of the Ghana card first. Get everybody to have the Ghana card. Number two, make sure that the data on the Ghana card is linked with other things like your SNIT, your TIN, everything else, so that you have a
last time I spoke
with a common source.
The last time I spoke with the CEO for Margins, he had indicated that about 7 of the government agencies are currently on it.
That's good. But you still hear people creating databases all over the place.
Yes.
We should have a central source.
Database.
So that when you mention your TIN, even your driver's license is
on it.
Check. Police stop you, all they need is your Ghana card. They can check everything. These things should be there. So these are two areas.
One of the biggest places that we actually spend our revenue on is on the payments to government workers. And the finance minister...
The wage bill, yeah.
Yes, the wage bill.
Yeah.
And the finance minister was very clear that it's becoming unsustainable and we have to look at innovative ways of really getting people employed. What are your thoughts? Are we going the right tangent?
I think that, for example, in 2020 when we had a COVID, okay, and there was a lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Government workers still received their full salaries, even though they were home.
Yes.
And I found that very strange.
You thought they should have taken half pay?
What government should have done was to probably pay them maybe half
of the
because
salary.
you will agree with me, those in the hotel tourism industry
Didn't get
most
anything.
of the
Some are
workers,
still even paying half.
yes,
It's true, but it's unpopular.
Some of them were laid off. Okay, and now we are looking at what? Productivity. The government sector, I'm not saying that all of them. I have worked with the government sector and I'm now with
A private sector.
Yeah, the private sector. I can see the difference, attitude to work. And you find that when you pay people and your expenditure is high and it is not matched by a corresponding productivity, now marginal productivity begins to fall. And that is why the city is always dropping. And so I think that, yes, I agree with the minister. Government cannot employ everybody. And that is why we expect government to make sure that the business environment is conducive for private persons to be able to invest and create employment.
I like that.
So what do you do? I expect him that in the 2022 budget, there should be clear laws which will enable private businesses to thrive. These young university graduates, how do they set up their small businesses? You know, Ghana has a huge market, but the problem is that raw materials, look, you cannot afford to actually buy them. And so there's a lot that government needs to do. People go to work, okay, late and they leave early. Their contribution
That's so true.
to output, and you look at aggregate demand, there is always a mismatch, and that is why the economy does not grow as we all expect.
Okay, I want to find from you, since you work in the enabling environment, the ease of doing business ranking. We haven't actually ranked very well.
No.
So if we're actually asking people to go into running their own business, I want to find out from you whether we have that enabling environment for people to easily do business registration, file their taxes, and be able to get the kind of businesses they're looking for. Was the minister talking out of sync, looking at what is happening currently in the business environment?
Thank you very much. I think the minister was right. Unpopular as it may sound, he was right. We can't continue employing people and not get the productivity going up. So that's right. I think the bit that was missing is what you've talked about, creating the right enabling environment. That's the government's job, to create the enabling environment for private sector to survive. There are three things I want to point out in this area.
Go ahead.
The first one, for example, is like Eric just said, right?
Yeah.
Just said, there's so many smart graduates, even in the tech industry where I'm involved, who are doing things, setting up every day. Ghana cannot provide opportunities for all of them. There's opportunity for business process outsourcing, for example, which is popular elsewhere.
Yeah.
The government has to have a plan to attract jobs to bring into Ghana.
That's true.
Whether it's call center jobs or creating fintech apps, all those things. We need to do those things. So the talk of Twitter and Google and the rest coming in, we need to discuss this with them. What opportunities do these offer in that direction? I think the second part also is overheads are always very high, so businesses are not able to employ enough people. Now, COVID has taught us that working from home is here to stay.
Yes.
What that means is that government should create the enabling environment for people to be able to work from home and do all sorts, so that to start
Proper
your small
internet
business,
system.
yes, To start your small business, you don't need to go and rent a huge office and do all those things. Productivity also gets high. I know people who drive 3 hours to get to work. By the time they get to work, they are so tired. Productivity is definitely going to be low.
Stressed up.
It's stressful. Okay, so government needs to encourage these things, working from home, encourage businesses to buy into this. It means creating the right infrastructure, for example, when it comes to the tech industry, whether it's network or whatever. Also give people incentives, whether it's tax incentives or whatever, so that people will be willing to do good business. Because the reality is that the more difficult it is for people to survive, the likelihood that they look for opportunities to cut corners and not pay their taxes and all sorts. We're not encouraging that. But we're saying the government should make it easier for people to do genuine business and be able to pay their taxes. Then government will get this revenue.
I still want to stay in this space because it's very dear to my heart. We actually sat down together with the Business Development Ministry at the time to started creating a startup bill.
Yes.
Is this something we should look at quickly as really closing the gap for us? And what would you say should be the...
If I can have a bite on that.
Yeah,
it's
please.
Great. That ministry, some of us were on Twitter exclaiming that great move.
Yeah.
But I think, again, the steps, some of them are not in the right direction. They need to bring in the right private sector people who know how to do these things.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
be able to advise the minister on things to do, creating the environment. I go to work with people like Comfort and the rest. The number of smart young women who are producing even share better and things like that. Too many of them. This is a great opportunity, but are they able to access the support from this ministry and all sorts? We need people who have worked in this industry to be able to start bringing these together, organizing them and positioning them to be able to even export their products outside. For people like me and people in my industry, to set them up online so they can start promoting their products and services, because they can't afford radio and TV.
I want to take this, and I'm sure the two of you will speak on it in relation to growth. Because we can't really make a lot of money and run the budget without talking about issues relating to growth. We were doing below 5% growth for 2021. Were we really growing in the right areas? Because I know that a lot of the time since the introduction of oil, the oil growth actually takes a chunk of it. And that is a very small section of, the population. And so issues relating to growth, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. Growth can only happen or occur when you have increases in output. And when you have sustained increases in output as a nation, that leads to economic
growth,
development. You see, so long as there are hindrances to output productivity, then as a nation we cannot grow. Unfortunately, the COVID has come in and it's come to stay. It's affecting virtually everything. Okay, so that is the reason why my good friend is even saying that government in the 22 budget, I expect that government will put in policies that will make the environment conducive for what growth.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you did mention, look, if you want to work from home, you want to work now, I'm able to work from home. How much do I pay for
electricity?
Data, electricity, water, utility bills? Okay,
Is your company giving you some money for that?
Yes, because you are a senior manager. Okay, and I find it exciting because you can sit in the comfort of your home and work. You're more
productive, actually.
You don't need to drive for 2 hours and then drive another 2 hours. And you realize that you work more relaxed. The cost of fuel is less. You don't use paper. For somebody who wants to start a new business, a graduate, I'm wondering where you can get the money. Because even if you are giving each university graduate who is smart 5,000 cedis
Ghana
to start
cedis.
with,
Yes.
They can do a lot with that.
Well, it depends.
If the right environment is there, they can do a lot
because
with
you
that.
see,
You have to do your registration.
you have to do very good.
Yes.
You have to do your registration, and you need to get a small office, even if it's your home.
You need to create the environment, a table and a chair.
Are even living with probably
parents.
Their parents.
Yeah.
So they need a laptop. How much is a laptop?
Yeah.
So
a good one should be going above 4,000 cedis.
Very good. So these are issues that I think that as a nation, there should be a forum for all of us to bring our ideas, get the experts, and then they will be able to advise government. And I think that when that is done, we are actually going to grow. Because for me, or in my opinion, I don't see how our economy can grow when our output keeps decreasing. Look at agri sector. Look at agri sector. The floods that occurred in the north.
In the north.
It is our food basket.
It is.
And there are floods. After these floods, you know what is going to happen? These worms are going to take over because the waters. So we need people to sit down, Giorgio, and come up with ideas that will enable Ghana. Because look, we have the resources. We have Ghana. We have the resources. I have traveled up north, and I said, wow, what is happening? And they are just left there. So I expect the finance minister in the 2022 budget to come up with all these issues that we are discussing here, so that Ghana, all of us, can move forward as a nation.
Let me add a bit to that, especially since you mentioned agric. Now, before 2021, a lot of young people were even encouraged to go into agric.
Yes.
And did a lot, whether it's vegetable farming, pig beef, all of them, which was great. But even this year, the issues we've had with fertilizers, for example, have really discouraged people from investing. There have been a lot of losses. For example, you talked about going to the north. You don't need to go to the north. Drive on the road to Adan and stuff. See the number of watermelons on the roadside every day. And these are rotten. This is where, for example, the 1D, 1F, I feel hasn't been executed effectively. You need small units, small factories to process these into juices and all of that. These need to be enabled by the government. Talking about 1D, 1F, it shouldn't be big industries. It should be, we've done it with the Gary factories. We should have small ones that can mobilize, get these products from the farmers, easily process them so that post-harvest losses are not increased. That's a way we can diversify our agric effectively and still be making money, because we're relying too much on cocoa, which is not doing too well.
Okay, maybe to add to what he's saying, you see, if you want the economy to grow, why don't you give tax exemptions? Or, yes, we have them, but in Ghana, the moment you register your business and you walk to the GRA office, just last week, I went to a GRA office trying to register a client that is yet to start
a business
operations. They've done the registration, and because I'm a tax consultant, I'm doing everything on their behalf. And I get there, and the tax officer looks at me and says, "Oh, also, sorry for the tree." And I said,
he needs to pay a bit.
Yes. And I said, how?
He hasn't even started.
The person hasn't started. And then it's like, oh, we need to get some money because the finance minister has given us a target.
What has that got to do with the rules and regulations?
Because, yes, I'll tell you, because they have been given targets. What happens is that those who are already registered with the GRE, every year they would ask that you probably pay more. Fortunately, it is not so, because now we have self-assessment, at least for the medium taxpayer offices and the large taxpayer. What about the small taxpayer offices? When you go to the small taxpayer offices, they still assess them. And I tell them, why? So I expect government that in the 2022 budget, all taxpayers must be on self-assessment, so that if I'm starting my business and I know that I'm going to incur so much cost, I look at the income. You can file nil for as long as there is a justification, because at the end of the day, the law requires that when the year or the basis period ends, 4 months afterwards, you file your returns with the GRE, and it will show that it's nil. Fortunately, I am happy that government is now asking that you can carry forward your losses for 3 years for the normal businesses, and for the prioritized ones like mining, 5 years. Okay, so that is also good. One other area is the debt to equity ratio. Okay, if you borrow, GRA will allow you to take the interest Okay, it is now. It used to be 1:2. Okay, and then we had to talk about it. Now it is 3:1. So it means that when they do the computation,
yeah,
and it exceeds the 1 to 3, the excess is added back for you to pay. So why can't they probably make it 1 to, let's say, 4, so that at least you're sure that those interests that you pay all are going to be allowed as expenditure in your expenses in your financial statements.
I want us to zero in on the debts now. Our debts are gradually becoming unsustainable.
They're rising.
Yes. And I want to find out from you if you feel that the way we have managed the whole space, it's actually a reoccurring thing all the time. But what are your thoughts?
Quick one for me as, a layperson. I think we can't ignore debts. But where we invest the borrowing is the real issue. Yeah. Because if we invest them in the wrong things, we won't be able to generate enough to pay the debts. And that's a bit of what we haven't seen. We've borrowed a lot. We've talked about investing them in various things. But if you go to the ground, you can't see these things. It goes back to what I said earlier. If we are borrowing, we should borrow also to create an enabling environment for private sector to contribute enough to government revenue. If we don't do that, we'll still be in debt.
Okay. Currently, we are hovering around 76%. Okay. And it means that we have even crossed the threshold, which is 70. That is why people have been saying that where we are heading to, we are in the muddy waters. For debt or borrowing, I don't see anything wrong. Like my brother said, what you do with those monies, okay? Let me give one example. Commander Sugar Factory. Commander Sugar, the infamous. We've had to borrow so much, and look at that factory. It's sitting there. It's sitting there. Do you know if that money was to be used to build even hospitals in Ghana or chips compounds?
Would have generated.
It will help because once we are healthy, that is what we'll be able to work, and then output will increase. Is it so? I think that when we borrow, we should put the money to good use. That's what we call value for money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before you move, I wanted to find out whether government should even be spending on enterprises at all. Should government not totally take its hands out of businesses? Totally.
No, that is not possible. You see,
but it's shown in this factory that government is not a businessman. It's not a good businessman.
Yes, but you see that in some areas,
you need
the volumes or the quantum of money needed to do certain things. No individual can do that.
Like which area?
Oh, for example, if you want to build a bridge, or even tar a kilometer of road.
I think if I can do that. You see, the reason why we're saying that is that we haven't quite piloted or looked at the option of private sector or PPPs in this area where we build roads and allowed to tow them. I'll give an example. We've just opened the Pokwase interchange. 4th year, we've sang and danced about and all that. But go there now. The traffic that is there, it makes the situation worse. If only the government had had the right approach to building this bridge, to eliminate all these people who hawk on the streets and then do the road also between there and in Sawam. Because what the government doesn't realize and didn't take into consideration is that more and more people are moving to that area.
Yes.
And so people leave those areas 4 a.m. to come to work. These people cannot be productive. So we need to have even a different approach to investing. Yes, let's build bridges and all of that, but let's plan properly. Let's think about the area in which we are building these bridges and whether or not this money in building the bridges is enabling people to be more productive. That's where government, I think, misses it for me.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that this year, the government is saying year of roads. Okay, year of roads. And sometimes when I hear some of these things, I keep wondering. Because from the little travel I've done, roads are constructed.
Just a minute. I want to find out from you the 2022, I want us to fix something for you technically. So I will ask him a quick question.
Okay.
The 2022, for you as a private person, what will be your 5 key things that government should be looking at? So whilst you answer, we fix him up technically. 1,
make it easier for people to pay their taxes. Number 2, make it easier for people to operate, private sector to operate, whether it's in roads, whether it's in providing the infrastructure for people to even work from home and do all those things. That's number 2. Number 3, where possible, government should invest in training people, young people who are going into business. Where they have the skills, but they don't have the business acumen. We need to have these hubs and partner with stations like yours to provide these master classes and trainings for people.
Oh, we do have a master class.
Now, you have them.
Yes, we do.
But if the government came in to partner with you, it will be on a bigger scale.
That's right.
I've been on your master class a couple of times, but it will be on a bigger scale. Well, more people need to access these. So that's number 3 for me. Number 4 is also make it easier for businesses to be able to employ other people. If, for example, the first few years, the tax concessions are there, then it makes sense for people to be able to employ younger people, younger graduates to do that. Number 5, let's make national service work. A lot of national service people are posted, go there to go and buy wachi and do photocopying. They are not taught anything on the job. Let's make national service work.
Yeah, it's one of the best and biggest form of internship that could actually help them to grow. You were making a couple of points. I will just hand over my microphone to you so that you can make your points, and then you can add your 5 takeaways. We should go inside in the next 3 minutes.
I was saying that roads, I have observed from the little travel that I've done that major highways don't even pass through the cities or towns. No. And 1, it eases even, yes, and then even the time that you spend. You only realize that there is a detour when there's a town. For example, if the one that we have here in Ghana, at
Nkoko and Sawam.
Yes, in Sawam and Nkoko and all that. So that is what I expect. And then the 5 things that you mentioned, I will mention 1, import duties. Import duties should be reduced. And I think that for some of them, if you really want these businesses, especially the newly established ones, to grow, those duties must be probably scrapped for some of them. 2, utilities. 3, tax exemptions for those who just start running their businesses. 4, interest on loans, because if you don't have the money, and I believe that these young graduates or even somebody who has been in the system for a while needs money, has ideas, he has to go to the bank. And the interest on these loans, you cannot pay. And then lastly, I think that government should ensure that there is a market. There's a market for the products or the services that people will render. I mean, it's so sad when during the bumper season, you go and you see food items getting rotten, you see fish getting rotten, and yet we import so much. So that is what I would say. Finally, I think that filing of returns. It is in the law. Everybody is expected to file. Members of parliament, the minister himself, his deputies, the directors of companies, how many of them file? And when they do, what comes out of it? So I think that I'll say this for now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to find out from the 2 of you. I'm sure all of you have cars, don't you?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with your fuel prices?
No way. No way.
I am not. And sometimes I don't want to sound political, but my challenge is that we have an oil refinery in Ghana. Governments have gone, others have come. What are we doing to tour? Do we need to engage a private person like my brother is saying to come and run tour Because I believe that if you look at the cost, if you look at the cost, the huge losses, it is not only with TOR, most of the state-owned enterprises. And that is why
there should be an audit, isn't it?
Very good. That is why I'm happy that SIGA, now before you are given an appointment to head a state-owned enterprise, you are going to sign a performance contract.
Yeah.
It is in there. And so I think that with time...
But for me, yes, you can sign a beautiful performance contract, but if you continuously have interferences, you know, from sitting government, that becomes like a big problem.
Yes.
If you ask me, I'll say that the fuel petrol price is an easy one for government. Everybody buys petrol, they tax it.
Yes.
Some of the taxes that are there, we really don't need them. But it raises enough revenue for government, so the government doesn't want to do them.
Yes.
What Eric just said, we need to start considering seriously whether or not we need some private people with proven track record running some of these businesses.
State enterprises. Yeah.
And where you talked about certain targets and the rest, if we set them no interference, and at the end of the period, there should be proper appraisal like you do in private sector.
Well, great. Well, that's why we are here. Thank you, Eric and Stephen for helping us. We're going straight inside where my colleague George Afe is standing by to discuss the issues relating to the 2022 budget, what should be the highlights, and what should government be looking at. My name is Odile Ntiamoa. Let's just head straight inside. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, picking up from Odila. Interesting discussions, the pre-discussions for our event, that is the Graphic and Stanbic Bank breakfast meeting on the pre-budget 2022. What is going to happen when the finance minister goes to Parliament on November 17 to present this budget? Well, today we're going to engage some industry persons, and also we are glad to have the Minister of State in charge of Finance with us as well, and the MD of Stanbic Bank and other business leaders here to have a discussion with us. My name is George Afe. I'll be your MC for this program. Without wasting much time, I want to call on Theophilus Yate, Editor, Graphic Business, to give us the opening prayer for this event. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Please let us pray. Our God and Father, we thank you for a time like this. We have gathered here to deliberate and also seek economic direction for our country. We ask for wisdom, we ask for knowledge, we ask for understanding. We pray that, Father, whatever we do here will be to the benefit of our country. And we ask that you ensure that this program will be nothing but a success and a very impactful one. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mr. Yate, Editor, Graphic Business. And there's someone who is putting together this program for us, bringing all these distinguished persons here to this program, Graphic Business and Graphic. It will be a wonderful time to call on the MD of Graphic to give us his welcome address, Mr. Atuafo. Round of applause for him, please.
The Honorable Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Charles Edugwahin, our special guest, Dr. Abdallah Ali Nachia, our expert panel members, Dr. Randolph Nsuru Ambala and Dr. Priscilla Chumisi, the Managing Director of Stanbic Bank, Ghana, Kwamina Aswini, fellow Chief Executives, management of the Graphic Communications Group Limited, ladies, gentlemen, and our audience member networks around the regions of this country and around the world. It is my honor to welcome you to this edition of the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting, a platform that sets the tone for informed discourse on important topics that impact business and the economy at large. Today, we will be discussing the 2022 budget with a view to making inputs that may potentially influence the content direction and the discussions under the theme Pre-Budget 2022, Insights and Recommendations. One of the key outtakes, I believe, for many a consumer, many a business is potentially a hope that there will be no new taxes in the year 2022. But that may be our wish. What will be the decision of the experts, the demands of business, the demands of the wider society? Government obviously needs to drive revenue generation and grow the base to enable a further revenue collection that would enable the budget to be sustainable and to be sustained. And importantly, a budget that would impact consumer lives and enable consumer confidence to enable ongoing spending in our broader socio-economic lives. And we need to bear in mind that the 2022 budget is not about businesses alone. Importantly, it has implications for the ordinary Ghanaian in the streets, in our homes, across our schools and campuses, markets, cities, towns, and villages. So when these discussions are going on, let's not begin to think and presume that it's about only big business and big experts, PhDs and others. Therefore, today's business offers an opportunity to enable many Ghanaians to join this discussion virtually. We want this to be as participatory as possible, and we want to hear from all of you around the country and around the world who have an interest in the 2022 budget in Ghana. And I'm confident that the technocrats that we've enabled and assembled here would guide the discourse with practical thoughts, ideas that could help shape this agenda. And on this note, it is my singular honor and privilege to welcome you all, and I'm confident that we will have an insightful and enabling discussion devoid of noise. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can do more. Appreciating Mr. Atuaful, MD of Graphic. He came to give us a welcome address, but he also made a passionate appeal about whether there wouldn't be taxes or not. They say that when you want to speak to God, you speak to the air. But what about when you want to speak to the human being who matters, and he's here with us? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call upon an MD of a bank that believes in this discourse, that indeed you have to bring those who matter in the business community and also the stakeholders and those who manage the policy space to have this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Managing Director of Stanbic Bank Ghana, Mr. Kwamena Osumeni.
The Honorable Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Charles Eduboying, the Managing Director of Graphic Communications Group Limited, Mr. Atuaful, our distinguished special guests and panelists, guests both here physically and virtually around the world, our friends from the media, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you once again to this morning's session. Our budget discussions this year are occurring at a time when Ghana's fiscal position and trajectory are receiving increased scrutiny from our external investors. These investors have underlined their concerns by trading their positions quite aggressively. Together with our partners, we're pleased to provide this platform as an avenue for the business community, for citizens, experts in the financial industry, and the government to actively contribute to the debate on our fiscal performance and outlook. In doing so, we envision a flood of ideas and approaches that will support the development of policies and programs to reverse these trends and improve our outcomes as a nation. Ghana isn't the only nation with increased debt levels and widened fiscal deficits and sluggish growth in the COVID-19 era. Yet the fact that when compared to our peers, our bonds are currently attracting higher risk premiums raises uncertainty as to how the financing of the budget deficit will be accomplished efficiently. But more importantly, these trends dictate that we significantly improve the execution of our budgets, especially since the levers available to address the widening deficits, which are stimulation of growth, a reduction in spending, and not surprisingly, the raising of additional revenue through taxes, are universally known and consistently cited in our budgets. It is my expectation, therefore, that a meaningful proportion of today's discussions will focus on stimulating conversations about improving our results from our budgeting process through more effective execution. Clearly, our budgets are prepared with painstaking detail and presented with precision. But a gap often emerges between what our leaders want to achieve and the required discipline for meshing strategy with reality, aligning people with goals, and achieving the results promised. To what extent are the action plans that the budgets represent and which are to support the government's strategic plan appropriate? Will execution discipline be enhanced with more detailed operating plans, complete with time-bound activities and targets that synchronize and provide a framework for all of the government's divisions? What are the milestones in our budgets and government strategy? When government fails to meet such milestones as it executes the plan, how do our policymakers reconsider whether they have the right strategy after all and adapt over the course of the budget year? These are some of the questions that I believe we will seek to get answers today. Ultimately, to improve the results in any endeavor, we need to understand where the results come from and then improve the processes and initiatives that cause them. To my mind, these are some of the burning issues that I believe our panel of experts will tackle and keep the conversation going this morning. Thank you very much.
Let's do it again for Mr. Sumeni. Indeed, such a wonderful speech, and he has set the tone for us here this morning with respect to what the business community will be looking forward to in the 2022 budget that will be presented to Parliament on November 17 by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. So what should he be looking forward to? I know that most of the time the ministers don't want to give us insights what should be expecting, only to sometimes, quote, confuse us more as to what is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry for his keynote address. Honorable Charles Edubwani.
Thank you very much, and thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and all dignitaries. I stand on the protocols of the previous speakers. I remember, was it Ronald Reagan who in his campaign said the famous, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and promptly decided to do so as soon as he got elected. So I'm not going to go there because, you can't take my word for it about reading my lips. But what I think I could do is set the stage and give you some background as to where we are, where we come from, and I'm hoping that will help us in our deliberations today. I'm hoping that we'll be able to come up with some great ideas today during the panel session, and I'll be all ears looking to see what we can incorporate into our budget because, businessmen and women like yourselves and citizens are the ones who feel the pulse of the nation and understand exactly what the issues are. But to set the stage, I think it's important that we remind ourselves about where we've come from. 18 months ago, we were all thrust into the COVID pandemic through no fault of ours. It had a devastating effect on our finances and on our plans and programs. We had enjoyed 3 years of consecutive growth at about 6.9% between 2017 and 2019. We had reduced the policy rate from about 25.5% to 16% by 2019. Reserve position had improved to about 3.5 times import cover in 2016 to about 4 times in 2019. And we had chalked a positive trade balance consistently, amounting to about $2.3 billion in 2019 as against a negative position of $1.8 billion in 2016. So for all intents and purposes and by all measures, we seem to have done pretty well going into 2020, and we're very eager and looking forward to a year in 2020 that would have even chalked up more gains for us. And all these achievements were made possible by prudent monetary programs, sound fiscal policies, and targeted structural interventions that helped Ghana to be better positioned to weather the impact of the pandemic. However, COVID hit, and by the end of 2020, GDP growth had slowed down from 6.9 to a very anemic 0.4%. Inflation had crept up, but remained around the 10% target. The city stayed pretty stabilized at 3.9%, but which is comparable to 71% depreciation between 2013 and 2016, and 26.3% between 2017 and 2019, and 30.2% between 2017 and 2020. However, we saw our debt to GDP balloon to over 76%, and as well as we saw a precipitous drop in our revenues, entirely because of the COVID pandemic. So that was how we sort of started 2021. Clearly, we had to really review our policies and our strategies and come up with a budget that was anchored on debt sustainability, but also could provide some kind of fiscal stimulus that would provide the stimulus to push us back out of the COVID-induced recession. So but we had to anchor this on debt sustainability because we had really, because of the COVID pandemic, really increased our total debt stock. So we focused the budget also on consolidation and also on completion of existing projects. We figured out, look, instead of announcing new projects, we should focus on all these projects that were out there, partially completed, and focus on completing them rather than introducing any new projects, in line with the whole fiscal consolidation stance. I must remind the audience that we between 2017 and 2019, we essentially had really managed to have a careful blend of fiscal consolidation where we brought the deficit down considerably, but at the same time managed to identify programs and policies that created or generated the growth we needed to sustain that 6.9% GDP growth. It's a very fine balance to be able to balance the two. On one side, be consolidating, and on the other side, be investing for growth. Because people will say to invest for growth, you have to have expansionary policies. So that was the focus for the 2021 budget: prudent economic management, sound monetary policy, a firm commitment to return to the Fiscal Responsibility Act of under 5% by 2024. We also introduced the Ghana Cares program, which was an ambitious 100 billion package between government of 30 billion and private sector of 70 billion over the next couple of years to drive or provide a stimulus for growth. We've seen some economic recovery in 2021. Q2 GDP growth indicates growth of, I think it was 3.9% in Q2 of 2021. Reserves positions have improved, and the lending rates have continued to decline to about 20.5 as of August 2021. As I said, our latest estimates suggest the economy grew by 3.9% in the second quarter of 2021. And we believe, while the deficit remained firmly at 9.4% against a target of 9.9% of GDP, as reported in September 2021. Our focus over the immediate to the near term is to press ahead with economic and fiscal reforms to lock in economic stability and lay the foundations for sustainable and inclusive growth. The second phase of reforms being implemented under the Ghana Cares program reflects our resolve to use the pandemic as an opportunity to build resilience against future crises and support an equitable post-COVID recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, fiscal discipline is even more important, essential today because of the changed global climate. Across many African countries, fiscal policies and debt levels came under severe pressure due to limited policy space and domestic and external macroeconomic vulnerabilities, increased health expenditures, and the need to provide fiscal stimulus combined with revenue loss exerted strong budgetary pressures on government financing. I'm sure you've all noticed recently the global sell-off in our Euro bonds on the international stock markets. There's been a general sell-off, but I think those of Ghana has been quite pronounced. It is a situation that is of concern, but I want to assure the audience that nothing fundamentally has changed. We are still on track to meet our deficit. We are still on track with regards to our revenue targets for the year. And we believe that the market reaction is not based on the fundamentals, which are essentially just as robust as they were 3, 4, 5 months ago. And we believe that in this coming budget, we would be able to reassure investors about, the credibility of what we are trying to do as a country. There's also been some capital flight as investors have moved funds back to the United States as yields in the West have become more attractive on the back of quite a lot of quantitative easing and a lot of spending, which has pushed rates up and inflation, which makes, rates back home vis-a-vis those here a little more attractive. So for the more conservative, it has been timely for them to move back to the West to invest. So we've continued to focus the budget, this coming 2022 budget, on some key highlights, especially given the backdrop to where we are today. We continue to still have high debt levels. We continue to still have challenges with regards to our interest rates. That has had an impact on ability for private sector to be able to borrow at attractive rates to fund investments and expand the economy. We continue to see some serious challenges with regards to job creation, especially for the youth. I think the just ended census confirmed the fact that Ghana has a very youthful population, and we're churning out graduates every day who are struggling to find jobs, and we really need to be able to create an environment and jobs opportunities for the youth to be able to make sure that they are employed. So on the back of that, this budget is focused on expenditure rationalization and optimizing the implementation of flagship and strategic programs, widening and deepening existing revenue sources, including expanding the tax net. Due to the elevated debt levels in 2020, we saw our fiscal space continue to be eaten up by high interest expense. If you look at how much of our revenue we're using to service our debt, it is clear that we need to look at how we can reduce the cost of borrowing. I see my good friend here, an MD of Stanbic Bank. What he didn't tell you is that we had a meeting with him and his colleagues, and we were like, guys, this interest rate environment is not sustainable. How can we see, what can we do to reduce the rates so that we can get the impetus to move this economy forward? Alongside that, given the fact that we have such high debt levels, we have to focus on revenue maximization. And we still really do not believe that we are maximizing our revenue potential. I think our tax revenues as a percentage of GDP is under 14%, between 13 to 14%. Most countries, even some of our peers in Africa, is closer to 18 or 19%. So clearly, there's a lot of room for growth. We've set up a revenue assurance unit within the Ministry of Finance with a focus on trying to plug the leakages. We also feel like the digitalization drive is putting in place the foundation to be able to formalize the economy and create the basis for us to be able to generate more revenue. But it's a fundamental cornerstone or anchor of our budget into 2022, the importance of digitization and deepening and widening the revenue sources. As I said already, debt sustainability amidst fiscal consolidation is also a big priority for us. We want to make sure that we continue to focus on putting our debt on a declining path as we move forward in order for us to get to what we believe should be normal levels around 60 to 65% debt to GDP. We also should not underestimate the importance of herd immunity through an aggressive vaccine rollout campaign. Our people can only be productive if they are healthy. And if, as you see, people still are not really, the workforce is still partially working from home. Not everybody is in the office. And so therefore, I do not believe that our productivity levels have gotten back to where they were prior to 2020. So it's important that we get everybody immunized, vaccinated, so we can get back to normal as quickly as possible. I think right now we have more than enough vaccines in town. And for those of you who are not vaccinated, I really encourage you to do so. And because the uptake has not been as good as we would like. And for some reason, people don't feel like they need to get vaccinated, but I think it's absolutely important that we do. We are not out of the woods yet, if I may emphasize that, and we should make sure that we get vaccinated. We also would like to focus this budget on returning our GDP growth to levels around above 5% in the medium term, and looking to invest in the productive sectors of the economy to achieve that. And last but not the least, focus on job creation, especially target to the youth, and also entrepreneurship, because we believe that, especially in the environment we are today, we really need to find ways to create a more entrepreneurial society, a society where everybody is not afraid to venture out and try a business or some kind of occupation, and provide them with the tools and the training to be able to do so. If we all, or a lot of us, try something entrepreneurial, more likely than not, we might create 2, 3, 4 jobs in the process. I remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, my minister mentioned that the payroll sector is full, much to the consternation of a lot of people. But I think he was just telling the truth. And if we have that mindset, I think we'll all start to look outside of the box and outside of the typical employment channels to see what there is available. I must say I've been very impressed by what I see online and the creativity and the resourcefulness of the Ghanaian people. If you go on Instagram and you see